To all our listeners, I just want to say in advance there were some audio technical issues this time around with the recording, so you're going to have some oddities. There were sections where I straight up just messed up the recording because I forgot to mute the video when I put it into Streamlabs for putting together the video. And so it was just an error on my part from that. Furthermore, I also forgot to actually independently record my own audio. So the audio quality on my end is much worse than it is for Justin. I just wanted to let you know that in advance. This is not up to our normal standards, but we do still want to get out our episode for this week. So just go ahead and give it a listen, and note that once again, this is not the normal standard. Any other episode will have exactly what you can expect out of the podcast. Let's get into it.
This week on the Orange Box Podcast, we talk all about the mysterious Nintendo Switch Online closed beta, the official reveal of the Destiny mobile game, the upcoming Xbox partner preview, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful Bane intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 54. I am your host, the man who is currently throwing pixelated frisbees to distract pixelated dogs from eating him, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has only licensed, not sold himself to the podcast, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been good, and it's also been very hectic. So I guess getting the hectic things out of the way, things have just been really busy at work, and none of us really understand why that's the case. But it's just that we've just felt so bogged down, and things just feel so overwhelming that we're trying to figure out how, if it's something that we can possibly rearrange some stuff in our workflow, if that can help or whatnot. But it's just really busy right now. We're hoping that maybe over the next few weeks things can calm down some, but as far as right now, it's just really crazy on that end. But now with the good news though, I did put my piece together. I did get things sorted out, and initially I was concerned because after I put in the CPU and booted the PC up, there was an orange light, which I thought, oh no, not again. And I was thinking, is it the motherboard then? But then it actually went to the lock screen, and so I thought, that's a very good sign, because I never made it this far before. It would just crash after the initial splash screen. So I logged in and I said, okay, that's good. Fiddled around with some stuff, and I thought, this is very good, and it seemed like things were working. So I decided to go ahead and install Steam, because I partially, again, wanted to see how this would play games, just because I thought, if I can get some extra performance right now, that would be nice. I mean, I didn't build it for the purpose of gaming, but if it can do a little gaming, then why not try it out? So I tried out several different games just to see how they would perform, and quite well. I'll discuss the games later, but I definitely would say that this is easily surpassing what I was getting on my on my gaming laptop. So I was like, this is great. So I think I might try to see if I can. What I'll probably do is I'll take the secondary drive that I have in my laptop, which had pretty much all my games, and I'll just stick it into this one, and might just game on there more now, which is pretty nice. Now, one thing I will say is that I thought I was trying to do better than I did when I first built the PC, and try to be mindful of how I had cables managed, because it's a small form factor PC, so you don't really have that much space with stuff, especially if you're trying to plug in everything. And for the most part, it worked until I realized that the cable that I have for plugging in to the CPU for the motherboard, unfortunately, I had to reroute it because when I plugged in the GPU, it was going to block it off. So I had to really finesse things, and it's not perfect. And I even, unfortunately, wasn't able to plug in like the lights, the lights for the PC for the LEDs. I'm like, that's fine. I don't really care anyway. But it works. That's like the most important thing that I was concerned about, is that it works and it's running well, and I'll be using it more often now.
Hey, maybe you can try and see if you can actually get some Helldivers 2 gameplay recorded.
That is very true. That's definitely very true. And which also is another thing, is I was very curious about. I wanted to actually try recording some gameplay from the PC, but for some reason, it wasn't displaying out to the capture card for whatever reason. I don't know why it's the case. I'll try again later on, but I thought about it. It's not the end of the world. For one thing, this is a more powerful PC, so I could probably capture some gameplay and play at the same time without having too much of a compromise. So it should still be pretty decent quality, I would imagine. So if I can't get to work through the capture card, that's fine. I'll just try downloading OBS onto the computer and just still screen capture that way. But definitely pleased with the results so far.
Good. I'm glad. I'm very glad to hear that. As for my week, overall, still pretty uneventful. Let me back up. Of course, I've been wanting to work some more on the Persona 4 Golden comparison, because I do want to get that out. I'm not intending to have it out until the Monday following my 24-hour live stream, which is next Friday, the 25th. So it would be Monday the 28th is when I plan to have the Persona 4 Golden comparison out. So I worked on it a bit this past weekend, and progress was very slow. So I think I spent probably about 5 to 6 hours total on it, and I got through like the first 20 minutes of the comparison. So it was very, very slow. I think I did some last weekend. I can't remember if I did or not. Whether I mentioned it last week or not, I'm pretty sure I did do some of it last week. So I got through like the next 20 minutes. The main reason why it was so slow, though, was mostly because the initial portion that I had worked on, I hadn't been listening to the audio. And unfortunately, there was a few spots, because of the fact that I'm doing 3 different videos stacked on top of each other, where even though the video was fine, it was, set exactly how I wanted it to be, the audio, because I wasn't listening to all of it, there were a couple spots where I forgot to move the audio track over when I was doing like my frame hold segments in order to pause the footage. And so then when I got to like 40-ish minutes into the comparison, I noticed that the audio sync was way off on a couple of things. So thankfully it was not that difficult to fix, but it still took me a little while because I had to kind of think through it. So the initial thing was that, for one, I didn't have to change anything with the video. The video is the part that's the hardest part to fix, because that's just like I'm taking single frames to match them up in order to have the scenes at the same spots at certain points. And so I didn't have to do anything with the video. I basically just took the audio track. I deleted the majority of it for just a couple of the videos, because like the one for the Vita, I basically didn't have to touch. But for the Steam Deck and the Switch, because of the fact that both of those were the ones were getting paused the most often, because they were usually ahead of the Vita, I just deleted all of the chunks of the audio track. Then I took the beginning of the audio track, which, they were all lined up at the very beginning, so I haven't started like cutting up the audio, because I do that after I've done all the video. So that, there will be audio from one playing and not the others. So I haven't done that. I haven't done that yet. So I had the beginning of the audio tracks for all of them. So I just deleted all of the extra audio stuff from the beginning on, and then I just pulled out the track. So basically, it's just taking the original audio and filling it out completely. And then from there, I could cut it and move stuff according to where the cuts are on the video. So it still took a little while, but it wasn't that bad. It was more just the initial discovery of it being so far off and trying to figure out how it got messed up. And I know what I did wrong, ultimately. I was able to figure out what I did wrong. Then I was able to get everything back to synced, and from there I was able to do a lot more on it. I still didn't get a ton done over this past weekend because I think I still only got up to like maybe the 45-minute mark. But I decided that, you know what, I have some time in the evenings. I can work on it before the kids go to bed, usually after dinner. So I just basically spent the past few evenings, with the exception of tonight where I spent more time prepping for the podcast, just working on the video. And right now I'm at, of the full 2 hours of the video, I'm at like an hour and 36 minutes ish. So I made a good amount of progress. I'm probably not, I don't know how much I'll be able to do before Saturday, but I'm going to try, if at all possible, at least on Friday, since I don't know if I'll have any time to work on it tomorrow when I'm actually editing the podcast, to see if I can get the video portion done. Because the audio portion, it still takes a little while, especially because I am going to have to, first I have to cut up the audio to where you don't have two things playing at the same time, but also, you know, those segments where the audio is already missing from one, like when like the Steam Deck footage is paused, there's no audio playing anyway, so then I would want to have the audio playing from one of the other two. But I, you know, have to cut it up, and it just will take more time in general because of the fact that it is 3 different systems instead of just 2. But then after I've done all the cutting up there, then I have to go back through. I start from the beginning and I just listen to it as I'm watching. That way I can catch if I missed anything video-wise. I know I'm going to have to like fix the sound icon for each one, and that'll take a little bit of effort, but it still shouldn't be too bad. That part's easy enough. But mostly I have to go through, and with all the audio chunks that are there for each one, I have to listen to each one. And if there's anything I need to edit out, like in terms of background noises, then I will go in, take that track into Adobe Audition and clean it up as best as I can. Some of those it's going to be harder than others. Vita's going to be the hardest one because I recorded that entirely when I was sick, so there was lots of sniffling, there was some coughing, and some other things. And so I'm just hoping, I mean, there may be some points where there's just no sound at all because it's like, okay, there's no way I can clean this out without it just messing up the sound. So it's going to be interesting, but if I can get that all done at an early time on Saturday, at least early enough, because I don't know. It's hard to say exactly how much time it's going to take me, because Saturday is also when I typically will get all the podcast clips gathered and uploaded, and then make up the thumbnails for all of those so that those can go up throughout the week leading up to the next episode. So depending on how much time that takes me, and then doing the other thing, then from there, I'm hoping Saturday, if not Saturday, then definitely Sunday, to do everything I need to do to make sure that I have stuff ready for the 24-hour stream. So the big thing is, because of the fact that this time I'm trying to do a dual PC setup where all the PC gameplay is being done on my main PC, and then my old PC, the secondary one that normally is in the guest room but just basically never gets used, that's going to be for specifically doing the stream itself. And that way, for one, that should drastically improve like the render quality of everything, because my PC is not having to do both things at the same time. 2, it should also make it so that if I'm in a position where I need to restart my gaming PC, it's not that big of a deal because I don't have to stop the stream in order to do that. I just restart my gaming PC, and then once that's restarted, I can play some more, go from there. So it's going to be, I mean, I haven't tried doing anything with it yet. Like, initially I was trying to mess with it, but the main problem I came across is that the splitter thing I got for Ethernet cables, it works when you have like a 100 gigabyte or sorry, not 100 gigabits, I think. If you have 100 gigabits or lower, then the splitter will work. So you have two cables on one end with a splitter there that goes into a single, and then on the other end you do another splitter that goes from the 1 to the 2. But if you have anything greater than 100 gigabits, I don't know, I'm remembering wrong exactly. But anyway, the point is that if you have anything greater than a certain speed for the connection, I think it's actually 100 megabytes, because 1 gigabit I think is the speed I have, my maximum speed. So anyway, point is that if you have anything greater than that connection, it doesn't split the connection. It only does one device at a time, which doesn't help me at all. I do have a second Ethernet cable that's running currently to the front room where we normally have the guest computer. It's going to be a hassle to move it to go in the opposite direction, especially because I, basically had it running all along the wall and everything. But I'm not really in a spot right now where I can afford to go grab a second cable. And so I'm just going to have to deal with it and get that plugged in order to be able to have both connected. Because this one doesn't have a Wi-Fi card, well, neither of them do. And having the hardwired connection would be more reliable anyway. So anyway, that's basically it. Otherwise, it's just normal stuff and gaming. And what have you been playing this past week?
Quick question though. I just want to ask you. So, are you going to be doing any sort of test stream since you're going to be doing the? Okay.
If I can't, I mean, if I have the time to actually work on it on Saturday, then I will do the test stream then. If I don't have the time to do it on Saturday, then it will be sometime on Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
But that would basically be the only time I really have. Potentially Thursday, if I'm able to, depending on whether or not I'm able to get that day off in addition to Friday, because I already have Friday off. If I can get Thursday off as well, and I'm specifically talking about next week, then I will probably do a last test stream, even just a brief one, just to make sure everything is running smoothly before I do the full thing on Friday.
Okay. Cool. But as far as what I've been playing though, so I went back into Halls of Torment to try out the new level and features that were added. So there is a new. I can't remember what the arena is called. Because I don't think it's called the Torment Hall or something like that. But essentially, at least so far from what I've played, because I haven't gotten too far into that new level. Essentially, what you are doing so far is there is a sort of giant mechanical spider in the center of this chamber, but you have to go around the room because there are four special, I guess, orbs that are sort of like providing a shield around it. So you have to destroy the 4 shields before you can actually fight the giant thing. And so it took me a while to even figure out what to do because it's a new area and there hasn't ever been that sort of type of objective before we're supposed to actually do something. It's normally just survive for 30 minutes and then face the final boss. Like that's generally the rules of the game. So this has been completely different. I've only made 2 attempts so far. Well, really, yeah, just 2 attempts, but it's very difficult because enemies are always coming constantly, and these are also stronger enemies. And even though I have, at least until the full release of the game, the best gear that was available, even on my strongest builds, they're definitely a handful. But then after eventually getting to the boss and fighting it, it's still difficult because there's a massive pool of health that it has. And additionally, I feel like the boss also can regenerate its health by summoning special enemies that turn into like gold coins that it uses to replenish its health. I can't confirm it, but I just know that I've seen the health bar slightly go up sometimes, and I'm very just curious about that. So that's definitely challenging. And in addition to that, because in order to actually access that level, you have to pay a fee that gives a random a random modifier for the level. So for example, enemies can probably deal 15% more damage, or there are 30% more enemies than normal. So every time you go into that area, there's a modifier that's added to make it more challenging. And you can also add more modifiers, but I'm not crazy enough to do that yet. But it's definitely interesting. I mean, there are also some other aspects that have been added to the full release, like you can actually gradually make your character stronger by having enough certain shards to level them up. And then also there's a new character that you can actually find, a new NPC to find, who actually helps in that regard. It also keeps track of all the items that you're missing and you could possibly find as well. So that's pretty nice to have on hand. So I'll play that some more, but it's definitely difficult. But the main game that I'll say, well, maybe I'll save that for last. So I tested a couple games out, which I don't have recordings of because of the difficulties I said with getting to the capture card. So I actually tried out Power World. That was one of the games I wanted to try because I knew that game was one of the more demanding titles because of the frame rate issues that I have. And I'll say that on one end, it's definitely a whole lot better. Now I set my monitor resolution to, which is weird enough, which is really weird, I'll say, is because it doesn't have 75 hertz or 90 hertz. It has 72 hertz and 96 hertz, which is weird. That's not a normal. That's not normal. But I still went inside the game though and capped it at 90 frames per second. And surprisingly, it actually hit 90, which is completely different from how I normally was playing before. And additionally, also, before I think, had it running windowed at 1080p. This time it was just full screen 1080p. And the settings were a mixture of medium and a little bit of high here and there. Whereas before, everything was pretty much running on low. So getting 90 frames in that, although granted, I still think there might be some slight Unreal Engine 5 unoptimization issues though, because the game still has moments where it dropped to roughly the mid 50s, which I feel like shouldn't be happening, but again, it could just be, I mean, the game also still is in early access anyway, and it's like the 0.2 whatever, but I also feel, again, possibly Unreal Engine 5 is just still not optimized well enough yet. But all in all, though, the fact that I'm getting 90 frames per second in a game that before I struggled to keep at 60 is just incredible so far. And yeah. So I played a little bit more Satisfactory, which again is another game that I was just using to test. And that one also, did very well with performance, and that one also I was able to get 90 frames per second and also have higher settings than I was getting before. So I'm very pleased in that aspect. Didn't really do a whole much in that regard. Again, I was just messing around, playing with the settings, just like trying to see how things were performing, especially in certain areas, if that made a difference or whatnot. But I mean, the game was already pretty much stable, and I was getting about 60, but I just wanted to see if I could push things further or not. But the main thing I've been playing, though, is Kingdom Hearts 2. And yeah, I'm definitely hooked on it. Before I wasn't certain if I was going to be hooked. I am fully hooked in this game, and it is just... Man, this game does so much. Oh, and I enjoyed the first Kingdom Hearts game, but this one, as far as gameplay goes, it just improved it so much that I'm overjoyed by this game. And also, I while I haven't played Birth by Sleep yet, so I can't really say, one thing I did notice from playing Chain of Memories 358 over 2 days, a little bit of, or a good portion of Dream Drop Distance and Recoded was the fact that even though they're a part of the games, you know, they're part of the stories and whatnot, the Disney worlds always felt like they were on the back burner in that aspect. Like Kingdom Hearts 1, they felt like they were a main part of the story, and it wasn't just you have Square Enix featuring Disney characters. It just so like they felt a perfect blend, and all the other games I mentioned beforehand, they felt like it was mainly Square Enix game featuring Disney characters. And I really feel like Kingdom Hearts 2 did a good job with incorporating the same elements of Kingdom Hearts 1, where the characters did feel like they were an actual part of the story. And I really appreciate that. And I mean, also, Dream Drop Distance did this with Tron because of the events that happened in Kingdom Hearts 2. But there definitely was a whole lot of continuity that occurred from Kingdom Hearts 1 because, you know, Sora sees all these characters. They recognize him. He recognizes them. It's not like, you know, you go into Chain of Memories and Sora sees all these characters and he's like, oh, who are you? What's going on? I mean, granted, he lost his memory technically, but, you know, it just felt like retreading the same story. And of course, definitely the same thing with like Recoded as well. And sure, with like Roxas and 358, it was, you know, he's new to them, but I just really appreciated what the game did as far as like properly incorporating the Disney characters here. But mostly again, it's just really fun, and I'm actually very surprised because when I played Kingdom Hearts 2 the first time, just the base version, the PS2 version, I thought I didn't make it that far into the game, but when I was playing Final Mix here, I realized I've actually made it much further into the game than I realized. I thought before I was probably about 25% into the game, and I'm realizing now that I probably made it about 60% into the game, because I knew that I'm pretty sure I had gone up until, I think, Zaldin, and I thought he was pretty much early on, but then I'm realizing, wait, I'm already at the point where you're supposed to fight the 1000 Heartless, and I'm like, really? Is like, I mean, I know there's more to the game, but I'm just like, I still haven't gotten to that point yet. There's still like, there's still more I haven't done, and I'm just really enjoying it. Now, one thing I will say is that I didn't play Pride Lands when I first played Kingdom Hearts 2, so that is the one thing I know I didn't do. I went back and did the main quest before going to there, and when I played this time, I was so confused because the very first enemies you fight, they can two-shot you easily. I'm granted I'm playing on critical mode, so that might play a role in it, but I was confused because I thought, should it be this hard? Should I be getting beaten that easily coming here? And I even looked it up online saying, hey, is Pride Land supposed to be this hard? But no, I mean, granted, I was supposed to like block or try to use some reaction commands, which helped out a lot, but man, yeah, it's definitely, overall though, I'm just really enjoying this game, and I'll definitely see it through the end at this point, because I'm right now at the part where you just revisit pretty much every Disney World so far for a second time, and I think the first one I'm doing right now is Land of Dragons from Mulan, so then I'll just keep going through that. Oh, but one thing I will also just quickly add is, it's so, you know, hearing he's a pirate in a Port Royal is so good. But yeah, I think that's... Oh, and then I just remember this one last thing. So one last thing I played was just a little bit of Stardew Valley with friends. We're pretty much at the point now where we have farmed enough items where we can build the new best weapon in the game. So next time we play, we should have enough items where we can get the best weapon, and we'll see where we go from there. But yeah, that's everything now.
All right. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, Kingdom Hearts 2 just... I remember how much I absolutely loved that game. And so So, a little background with my Kingdom Hearts 2 experience. So, at the point that I played this game, it was summer of '06. I had bought a PS2 Slim and the two Kingdom Hearts games. And of course, I'd already played through the first Kingdom Hearts, so I didn't really want to replay the second one. I played through the first one, played Chain of Memories on GBA the previous year. And so, but I, had really wanted to play Kingdom Hearts 2. So I got Kingdom Hearts 2 and my PS2. And I remember very specifically the job I was working, which was my first job. I was working the closing shift every night. So then I would come home from work. Sometimes, well, just in general, I would come home from work and at 10, 11 o'clock, whatever. And I'd be up till 4 a.m. playing Kingdom Hearts 2. Some good memories. And of course, at that point, I was single because that was the summer before I met my wife. Because I met her the fall of that year. But yeah, so, but still, good memories, good stuff. It's been a really long time, but it's still, at least so far, remains my favorite Kingdom Hearts game, and I'll see if I feel any differently when I'm done with Kingdom Hearts 3, whenever I get back to that. So in terms of what I've been playing, there's quite a few things on the list. I'm just going to kind of go over a couple of the brief ones first. Played some more Mario Party 2 with the kids. Specifically, we just finished up the game we had started because we had only gotten, I think, maybe 15 or so turns in, and well, I can't remember. Point is that we didn't quite finish the game that we had started previously, so we finished that up. So that was fun, and played more of the Lego games with the boys as well. Now I was, of course, getting to the point where I was nearing the end of God of War Ragnarok, and I'll talk more about that momentarily. But I just decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and boot up the original God of War on the Steam Deck first. And I was going to start it up on the Vita, but my Vita was dead on its battery. So I decided to boot it up on the Steam Deck, and I played a bit of that there. I ended up, I played a little bit on Vita, or a little bit on Steam Deck, and then played a little bit on Vita. And didn't really stick with either one initially. I got further on the Steam Deck, but I didn't play a ton, mostly because it was okay, I'm not really going to dive into this right now while I'm still finishing up Ragnarok. But I did play a bit, and then I ended up playing some more this evening just to record the footage because I didn't have any footage recorded. Of course, Steam Deck, it's 60 frames per second, and it's basically perfect emulation for the PS3 version. The Vita, it's 30 frames per second. Potentially drops below that. I don't know with absolute certainty. I will say I am not good at this game. The combat is just different. It's very different from the recent ones, and so there's some things that are in common, in general, it's just different enough to where I haven't quite gotten it. I got better as I was playing, for sure, but still I'm not very good. I think my biggest issue, honestly, is the fact that the dodging is mapped to the right joystick, and it's just inconvenient, dodging with that. I would much rather it be mapped to a single button, but I'm not really sure how easy that would be to do in this case, so I haven't tried to mess with that, and most likely I'll just leave it as is and not worry too much. If I play more, which I'm still undecided on it. It seems that it is possible to skip the cutscenes with nudity and stuff, because at least, although it's funny, so initially when I was playing, we were just listening to something in the evening, and I was basically just playing long enough to get to a save point, or get past the first boss of the game, which is just fighting a Hydra. And this cutscene comes up where it's it mentions, that Kratos was he was basically kind of like empty and trying to find ways to like get past the torment he was suffering by doing all this stuff, including sleeping with a bunch of women. It's like it shows a couple of naked women, and it's like, okay, I don't want to see this. This is one of the reasons why I have not played this game before. And I didn't know at the time that I could skip the cutscene because I was trying to do with like the star button and everything, and that wasn't working. Turns out you can just press A or B or the equivalent on PlayStation, which is X or circle. And so I'm like, I'm not looking at it. I'm just like, I take the Steam Deck and I just like plop it down on my chest, and I'm just not even looking at it until the cutscenes. It's like, this is the reason, like, I have to, I'm trying to stay away from looking at this stuff because I know it's not beneficial to me in any way, shape, or form. It's very detrimental to me. And I want to be able to enjoy the rest of the game for what it is, because like the violence, it doesn't really bother me because it's just like, whatever. And like, I get it. If people are like, oh, you're afraid to see boobs or whatever. It's like, you have to understand from a Christian perspective, lust is a dangerous thing, and even if it's pixelated, the fact of the matter is it still gets the mind going in that direction, and so it's not beneficial. And so I do want to stay completely away from that, but I do want to be able to play the game itself because I think that it could be kind of fun to go back to these old games, just because I've never like actually experienced them, and I think you can skip past some of the mini game stuff. I think it's just completely optional. And it's like, yeah, I'll skip past it. I don't care. I wouldn't be trying to aim for the platinum trophy anyway, because you have to like beat the game on really hard difficulties to get up to that, and to me, it's not worth it.
Oh goodness.
I don't care. I mean, because these older games, they actually required you to play on higher difficulties, at least with like God of War. At least I'm fairly certain you have to. And I have no problem just completely skipping that because it just doesn't interest me. So anyway, played a little bit. I enjoy the bit I played in general. It's just the controls. I don't know. It just doesn't control as smoothly to me. Like I find that the new games just control a lot more smoothly. Yes, the new games you lose the ability to jump normally, which is, of course, I mean, it's like basically the only time you can jump is when you're specifically like interacting with certain environmental things. Like you'll use the Blades of Chaos as essentially a hook shot to, grapple up to certain points. And yeah, so anyway, the bit I played, I like. I'm just not entirely sure if it's something I'm sticking with. Particularly because I happened to get another game in the mail that I had ordered a while back, and that's Animal Well. Mm-hmm. So I pre-ordered the physical version of this. I want to say it was back in April, probably. Something like that. It's a limited run, of course, for the Switch. I'd heard great things about the game when it first came out, and it looked like something I would probably enjoy. I mean, it's a 2D puzzle platform. Very little in terms of... There's like no hand-holding whatsoever. The game doesn't even really tell you what things do. You basically just have to kind of figure it out on your own. So like you'll get an item, and then you just... The extent of what you have is you have an icon with the item on the screen and the button to press, and that's it. It doesn't tell you how it works. It doesn't tell you what you do with it. Anything like that. You have to figure it out on your own. So I got Animal Well, and I guess actually I need to back up because I didn't start playing Animal Well until after I finished God of War. But let me back up a bit. All right, so I'd been playing God of War, the original God of War, on the Steam Deck. Played a little more this evening just to record it, but I didn't want to get real into it before this evening when I was considering it a bit more, because of the fact that I was still working on God of War Ragnarok. So going back to Ragnarok, Now, I already posted all of my attempts for the Valkyrie Queen on my channel, which includes the actual winning attempt. And here is just going to be the video of just the winning attempt. I will say I in no way felt like this one was as difficult as the first Valkyrie Queen, but some of that is because I'm much better at the game than I was before. Also because I've learned enough of the different patterns from various enemies, including the original Valkyrie Queen, to where like I could more easily deal with like their tells and that sort of thing, know how to avoid or how to, in some cases, parry, and then it's also just being better at making good use of my skills and so on and so forth. And this one definitely had a bunch of new tricks that the original Valkyrie Queen did not have. But I also had like more moves at my disposal, and I don't know, just in general, I found that it was still a hard fight, but this is not the one I struggled with the most in the game. I counted up my total number of attempts that it took me to beat the Valkyrie Queen, and if you include the times where I cut the fight short early, like in some cases I started up the fight, I messed up at the very beginning, and then I just went ahead and restarted from the beginning of the checkpoint because I was like, okay, if I'm messing up this badly at the very beginning, it's just going to make it really difficult for me to get the things done I need to get done initially to get the fight started right. And so those times, as well as a couple times where I just I had to get revived less than halfway through the fight, I'm just like, okay, this is not good enough. This is not going to work. I'm going to need to retry this. And so I went ahead and just restarted a few times. But that was 24 total times that it took me, including those times where I canceled the fight early before getting super far into it. The actual number of deaths I had were 18. So at least, well, I should say the actual number of deaths, not counting the ones where I died and was about to be revived and stopped and restarted the fight. So, because I don't really count that as an actual death because it's not the end of a fight. I mean, it's like I could still keep going if I wanted to. I just wasn't confident that if I was dying that early in the fight that I was going to be able to get through on a partial health bar for the remaining portion of the fight. So, but yeah, I think it was a fantastic fight. I'm not sure if I could immediately do it again. Like if I had the ability to attempt the fight again, I don't know that I necessarily would be able to get through it on a single attempt. I would probably fail a bunch. But this time that I fought her, I did well enough to where I was actually able to get the victory I was looking for. And unfortunately, that wasn't quite what I needed in order to get the platinum trophy equivalent, because it turns out that there was I think just one other relic I was missing that I had to get from an area I'd already visited, but I had missed the relic. And then there was I feel like there was one other thing I needed. But either way, I did get through the fight, and I'm very proud of having completed that. And then I was able to get the platinum equivalent shortly after. I will say the platinum trophy does not pop on PlayStation if it does not bring up the other trophies, and they still have not fixed the issue. And I'm waiting to hear back to see if they say anything about whether or not the achievements you earned while playing on Steam Deck can still get you the trophies on PlayStation. If not, then I guess I just won't have the trophy on PlayStation. I mean, it's annoying that it would be done like that, because with Ghost of Tsushima, anytime that sort of thing came up, I didn't have that problem. Like if I got the trophies on Steam Deck on Ghost of Tsushima, or if I got the achievements on Steam Deck, then as soon as I logged in on PC, those trophies would pop. So I don't know if this is something that they are going to fix or not. I hope they do, because I don't know, I just would like to be able to have that, but if not, then oh well, no big deal. I still got all the achievements for that. So when I finished that, I went straight into Valhalla, which is the DLC that follows, that is story-wise. I mean, it does actually have its own story. It follows after the events of the main game.
So if you have not finished the main game, don't go into Valhalla, because it does spoil major story points. And as I mentioned before, Valhalla is a Hades-like kind of thing. So to give kind of a basic summary of how Valhalla works, like I said, it's very much a Hades roguelike / roguelite sort of thing. And basically you go in with nothing. You start off, you don't have any of the original armor that you had. You don't have any of your gear. Or well, you maintain like your weapons, and your weapons are technically still fully leveled up. But in terms of like all of your stats, your attack, your HP, your rage, all of that is reset down to the base level that you normally would start the game with. And you don't get to bring in any of the armor that you had before, any of the accessories that you had that helped to improve stats or gave you certain perks that would aid you in how you played. So really all you have is whatever things that you already obtained, like skills that you obtained using experience points previously. So with all of that, you as you go through, in fact, actually, when you go in, you're technically not going in with any armor. You're just, at most, you can do cosmetics to make it look like you're wearing a certain set of armor, which is fine, but it's not really all that helpful. But what does work with this is that as you go through, just like with Hades, each time you complete an encounter, you have a chest that you can open, and that chest will give you choices of different perks that you can choose, and those different perks give you different skills that will aid you in getting through. And obviously, you can kind of just build your character with whatever perks you want to have. And a lot of these perks are things that would normally have been tied to armor sets or to accessories that you used previously, particularly the amulet that you had that could have a bunch of different gems attached to it as you upgraded it. And those gems would give you different perks to a degree. But then additionally, like normally you would get perks from certain hilts that you would equip on your weapons and things like that. So like a single run takes roughly about 40-ish minutes. I recorded the one that's being shown right now is the one I did earlier this evening just for recording sake, and I did a full run. And for the story, from the story standpoint, you have to complete 4 full runs in order to get all of the story beats that are attached to this DLC. So technically you get through the entirety of Valhalla, at least in terms of the story aspects, in about 4 to 5 hours. But in terms of, I mean, whether that's enough for you kind of just depends on your personal taste. The way I ended up doing it is I went through and I went and I didn't obtain all of the different character upgrades, because you can unlock certain permanent upgrades that like increase your maximum HP, increase your maximum rage, your strength, and so on and so forth. But I haven't earned all of those yet. However, I did do everything that enabled me to get all of the achievements. So I have every single achievement you can get. Now, something I do want to note with this, the end of each run, you have to face Tyr, who is the Norse god of war. And each time you face him, his weapon that he uses, as well as his attack set associated with that weapon, is different. So depending on which weapon he's using, that determines what attack set he has. And each time you face him, he's more difficult than the last, at least up until you've faced the 4th version of him. Once you get past that fight, then every time after that, it continues to be the same difficulty. So the 4th and onward, he's always going to be a purple health bar, so basically the equivalent of 2 levels above you. I'm not sure if that changes once you like fully upgrade all of your HP and so on and so forth, but I'm guessing it probably doesn't. And I mean, he's difficult, but I wouldn't say he was anywhere near as difficult as many of the other bosses. I'd say he's basically on par with most of the story bosses, where he's not so difficult to where I really felt like I had to fight him multiple times. Of the times that I fought him, there's only been one time where I actually lost the fight and got reset back to the very beginning of the whole thing. Because otherwise, basically, the way that it works is you finish the fight against him, and he's the boss at the end, and it ends up being very similar to like Hades, except instead of dying and then going back to the beginning, you just basically like black out and then you wake up back at the beginning. And then once you get all the story stuff, you just go back to the beginning each time you beat him. But the only time that I actually lost to him it wasn't even him that killed me. It was one of the elite enemies, this centaur that he summons, because like when he gets down to about halfway on his health, he summons enemies to help him out. And depending on which weapon he's using determines which types of enemies he's summoning, of course, which types of attacks he uses, what type of gimmicks are going on with the arena, and that sort of thing. So there was only one time that I actually lost to him on that last fight. And I actually got really close. I got him down to like just a tiny bit of health left, and I should have been able to take him out. But I messed up, and so I didn't. And then I had to do another run, and then I was able to get it after that. And since then, I've fought him multiple times, even though I finished the story portion, and I have not lost to him again. Part of it is also because of the fact that you can do resurrection stones even though you don't have a companion to help you out, and so you end up with having basically you have different. I'm sorry, let me back up. When it comes to the resurrection stones, you start with just one that you can get, and then as you go, you can also get a second one. But then late in the stage, like right before the actual boss arena, you can purchase another one. So you can have up to 3 total, which means basically that you would have a really difficult time losing. I mean, if you're really bad, or if you just don't quite have the skills, or you're rusty because you haven't played God of War in a while, then yeah, I could see you dying more. But like if you just finished going through the entirety of Ragnarok, like I did, and you've beaten all the optional bosses, all the berserkers, the Valkyrie Queen, everything, then you're probably not going to have a whole lot of difficulty. So what I ended up doing was, I mean, of course, I got all the achievements and stuff. Something interesting related to that, though, if you stay in the final area long enough before facing the boss, there's an arena that opens up where you can face like an extra difficult enemy. And at least so far for me, it's been berserkers every time. So I've only fought 2 of them so far, and I think they were some of the lower tier ones. But like I didn't have any trouble with them, even though they were higher level than me. I knew their attacks so well to where I didn't really have a lot of difficulty being able to avoid them, despite the fact that I definitely don't have the advantages that I have in the base game with all the specific gear and the way that my build was set up and everything. It's just kind of like I just have to work with the rolls that I get as I'm going through with the different perks and all of that. So, but it was kind of cool fighting 2 berserkers separately and not having any real difficulty with them. The one thing I will mention is that I know for a fact that you can fight the Berserker King again, and I think theoretically with 3 resurrection stones it should be pretty doable. But man, I don't know how much I want to fight him again. I mean, like I feel like I could definitely handle it, but it's going to be harder without having a companion necessarily. But at the same time, the fact that I could get revived potentially 3 times would definitely make it easier from that standpoint. So I don't know. it's one of those weird things where it's hard to say how easy it would be to get through. Um, yeah, it's just definitely interesting thing from that perspective. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about it other than the fact that I really, really enjoy that mode.
Mm.
I definitely think that when it comes to my 24-hour stream that's coming up soon, if I am struggling with staying awake, I will probably jump into Valhalla, because jumping back into that will be a great way to wake myself up, because it's a good way to get the blood pumping, and a run doesn't take super long. So um, I think at least for now, I'm still keeping the game installed on my computer, even though it takes up a lot of space. But I did uninstall it from my Steam Deck, so there's that. But pretty much the only thing I've been playing the past 2 or 3 days has been Animal Well.
So I didn't record a whole lot of footage. The footage I recorded here, I was really just kind of navigating around, because there's this task I have trying to get a certain item to a different location, but if I grab that item, then a certain enemy starts chasing me, and you can't kill the enemy. So I was trying to figure out the route ahead of time so that if I go into this, then I'll know how to get there. So the footage that's shown here is just me recording this evening, trying to just get a little bit of footage of me trying to figure out what route I need to take. But anyway, so this game is really interesting. As I mentioned before, Animal Well is a puzzle platformer game, 2D puzzle platformer, very retro styled in terms of its graphics. It really doesn't give you any sort of guidance on anything. It's very much it doesn't hold your hand at all, and it's just a really interesting environment. It has Metroidvania-like elements, but it's not really, I wouldn't call it a Metroidvania, because even though there is some of being able to backtrack to access certain areas, like you're not fighting bosses, you're just kind of dealing with puzzles in order to get around the environment. And you do have enemies that you deal with from time to time, but most of them are like you either take them out with fire by throwing firecrackers, and that stuns them until they die, or then there's some where you're just utilizing like a frisbee, and I'll get to that more in just a moment. But I don't know like what percentage I'm at this point, but I don't know. It's just a really interesting game. It's one where I've definitely found myself stumped quite a few times, and I only ended up looking something up once though, and otherwise it's just been kind of like, okay, let me find an area on the map where I couldn't access it before, and see what I can do in order to take care of that. See if there's any way for me to get there now that I have, like a new item or whatever. And that's just basically been how I've been kind of finding my way through this game little by little. And so yeah, like I think the main ultimate objective in this game is you're supposed to like either access or extinguish these flames, and there's like 4 of them that are in areas that are themed after specific animals. And I haven't gotten any of those yet, although I think I'm at a point where I can get one of them now if I can just figure out how to get to it. Now, the one thing I do want to mention about this frisbee, because it is hilarious. So the frisbee is the one way that you can deal with the dogs in the levels. So the dogs are fast. If you go past them, they will grab you and shake you around in their mouth, which of course takes away health. But if you get the frisbee, if you throw the frisbee, you can distract them temporarily if they just catch the frisbee. But what's really fun to do is there are certain areas where like you'll have like 3-4 dogs at a time.
And so in these areas where you have these 3 to 4 dogs at a time, you can throw a frisbee up against a wall, and as long as you're not there to catch it, if you have walls on both sides, the frisbee will just bounce back and forth, and the dogs will be jumping up trying to get the frisbee, and it is just absolutely hilarious because it distracts them. So they're just completely focused on this frisbee. They're not thinking about anything else. They're just focused on it. You can walk right past them. And I had to record just this little 14-second clip, and I'm just gonna loop it over and over because it's just so hilarious to watch. And yeah, I absolutely love this about this game.
Oh my goodness.
So going back to the frisbee, basically the way this works is you have this frisbee that's inside a statue of a dog head, and the thing is that you're supposed to take this frisbee, but if you take the frisbee out of the dog's mouth, the dog head statue's mouth, then the ghost of the dog will start chasing you and it can kill you, but you can't kill it. So this section that I'm on right now, you have to, let me back up. Initially, in order to get the frisbee out of the dog's mouth and actually keep it, you have to first find, there's a mock frisbee that you find in a different section of the map. You bring that there and you swap them out. And that keeps the dog ghost from spawning so it doesn't chase you, and then you can use the frisbee to do the stuff you need to do with it. But later on, at the point where I'm at, I need to get that mock frisbee back out of the dog's mouth so that I can stick it in a different spot, which should enable me to get to that special flame that I talked about. And the thing is that I can't swap it for the regular frisbee. I have to just straight up if I take the mock frisbee back out of the mouth, then the dog ghost spawns. And so I have to figure out how to get back to that spot where I put the mock frisbee in order to either kill the dog or, kill the dog ghost or make it stop chasing me or however it works. I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to get the flame and extinguish it. I don't know how any of that works. I'm just kind of guessing at this point. But either way, it's the next thing that I have on my list. At least I think that's something I can do now. And if not, then I'll figure it out and, if necessary, look something up. But either way, that's about where I am with this game.
Neat. When you mentioned about switching out the frisbees, all I can think about was just Indiana Jones swapping the idol for a frisbee. Thinking a couple things about, I had questions about God of War. So I know there probably would be, because of the gameplay differences, do you think it would help if you could try to see if you could map the controls for the original game to try to act like the newer versions?
I don't think it would, because honestly, the biggest issue is the dodge. The dodge is the one thing that I have a problem with because of the fact that with the dodge not being a single button press and with being on a stick, I don't know that.
Oh, right.
Because the direction that you move the stick is the direction you dodge. So I'm not sure how easy that would be to do. Plus, also there are attacks that you do that utilize L1 or R1 that would be more difficult to remap my brain around that. I mean, there's the potential that I could take at least some of those attacks, or maybe just make it so that L1 is mapped to one of the back buttons or something. I mean, I might be able to make it work, but I think realistically speaking, rather than trying to do that, it's probably going to be easier for me to just learn the controls. And it's not like I'm going back and forth anymore, at least not for the most part. I mean, I haven't fully decided if I'm actually really going to get into the old God of War games right now because, of course, for one, I'm finishing up Animal Well because I want to play entirely through that before I really dive into a new game. But the other thing is that I pretty much decided I want to do Starfield again. Even though it performs pretty poorly on the Steam Deck, it's, depending on where you are, it's not bad. You can get 40 frames per second in certain areas, and then other areas it's in the 20s at times, which sucks. But if I'm not, in general, I can make it work, and the game's not hard enough to where it is impossible to do. Now, obviously, if I'm playing on PC, it's going to have better performance and everything else. But when I'm just playing on Steam Deck, it's a sacrifice I have to make in order to be able to play it portably. But I mostly was just like, okay, well, I went ahead and I had uninstalled Ragnarok from my Steam Deck once I finished Valhalla, because I just figured at that point, like, even though I wouldn't mind going back and doing some more Valhalla runs, the game is almost 200 gigs, and that takes up a lot of space on my Steam Deck. And so it's like, I'm just going to clear that off. I'll download Starfield, which is smaller, interestingly enough. Starfield is a massive game, and it's a lot smaller in file size than Ragnarok. I mean, I think even with Shattered Space, it's 130 gigs. How? How is this game so much smaller than Ragnarok? Or rather, how's Ragnarok so much bigger? I mean, granted, Ragnarok is a better looking game, but it's also a much smaller game in terms of the environments and everything else. And while, yes, Starfield has a lot of procedural generation when it comes to the planets and all that, still, it's just kind of like, but whatever. But yeah, I'm planning to get into Starfield once I'm fully done with Animal Well. Because I kind of want to get back into that world, especially now that I have the vehicle to help me get around. And I just want to take my time with it and hopefully just really enjoy it again. Because I was having a really good time with it when I was playing it originally. It's just that I fell off because, well, partially because of the carry limits and the traversal around planets, but also just because I got sidetracked by other games. And now I feel like I'm ready to just go back in and fully invest a bunch of time. Not that I'm going to be playing only that on my 24-hour stream, because I'm definitely not, especially because it's not a game that is fun to watch. It's fun to play, but it's not fun to watch. So, anyway.
Okay, nice.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, well, let's get into the news. So, first of all, we have this Nintendo Switch Online playtest program. It's going to be starting on October 23rd. At least, yes, it's October 23rd that starts. So next week, next Wednesday. And we don't know what it is that they're testing. They basically limited it to a small number of people. They had a short window of time when people could register. I think they said only like 10,000 people total. And there's no NDA involved in it, but people have been asked by Nintendo to not share anything related to this. So not show any gameplay, no streaming, nothing. They don't want any of it shared with anyone. We know it's related to Nintendo Switch Online. That's all we know for sure. And the fact that it is so hush-hush definitely brings up some questions of what this could be. Now, I will just mention a couple of theories that I've heard. One being that it would be GameCube games finally coming to Switch Online, because that's been rumored for a while. There's been evidence of that regarding controller patents and stuff like that. In terms of them making a Switch Online controller for GameCube, potentially. There's theories of it being a streaming kind of thing. I heard one rumor, which I thought was probably the least likely. Not that I'm going to get too much into my commentary on the matter, but the idea that this would be somehow like a infinite power of the cloud kind of thing, where it would make Switch games play better or whatever. But yeah, right now we don't know anything. But I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's weird because Nintendo's never had any sort of play test like this of this. I guess I mean I don't even know what I would say, like not quantity or quality, because we know nothing about it, and so like it's weird. And the fact that they don't want anything disclosed either. Obviously, this doesn't have anything to do with Nintendo Switch 2, because you actually, I mean, unless And even then, I feel like if it was something related to the Switch 2, that would be something that they would probably really keep hush hush as far as like actually implementing NDAs, because this is something that is so new, or something that they would really want to say for a big announcement. I don't think just like having 10,000 random people just play this and expect them to be quiet would be something they would do. Um, but yeah, I'm not certain, because with everything that has happened, especially with stuff like NES, SNES, and Game Boy Advance, and also N64, they never had any sort of playtest for that for online. So it's really weird if it's something like the GameCube that they would do something like that for this, because why all of a sudden would you need a playtest for something like that? It's really strange. But I think definitely the strange thing is just Nintendo asking people to keep this under wraps. I mean, considering the fact that with all the leaks that have happened recently, with like Game Freak and the Pokemon Company, and then also just certain stuff like, I mean, granted, that's still speculation and rumor, and it's not confirmed, but with some of the Switch 2 sort of like shell manufacturing designs and stuff like that, that stuff is definitely under NDA. That's stuff that's definitely, hey, we will sue you if you release this in the wild. So Nintendo having something, or expecting something like this to be, I guess, confidential as far as, Scout's honor, is really unusual. So I, even thinking about and trying to think about something before we started recording, I really can't think of anything solid where I could say, yeah, this is my theory as to what this could be, because I don't know. Now, I guess one thing I'll say, maybe it might have something to do with a game, but I don't know if it would be something that, I definitely would feel like it's not something that would be, or it would be something that's a completely new title, new IP or something like that, because again, something like that is going to be linked. Like, especially since there's not even an NDA, something that big, Nintendo probably wouldn't just like say, hey, just be quiet about this, please, and thank you. Because people, I know people are gonna leak this. I mean, Nintendo's most likely gonna shut the leaks down, but it's gonna get out there. Because you cannot expect 10,000 random people across the world to just not post anything. I mean, there aren't that many people, especially random people, who would have that, who would be that, what's what I'm looking for? Who would be that diligent and, I guess, honorable to do that. So yeah, I expect to see some sort of leaks, even if they're temporary because they get shut down or something like that. But yeah, I don't know what we'll see, but it is interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say, for starters, before I get into thoughts about it in general, that I think that Nintendo should be doing an NDA if they really don't want people to leak it, because if they don't have an NDA, they don't have any legal means to stop people from doing this. I mean, yes, of course they can strike it, whatever. They can do whatever they can to take it down, but they can't. There's not going to be any consequences for anyone, at least any real consequences, because if Nintendo's just saying "pretty please," that's not. I mean, you will. I'm sure that you will have plenty of people who will not leak it, but all it takes is one person to leak it, and then it passes very quickly and goes from there. And I think that it's going to happen with at least one person. I think it's going to be a bunch of people are going to be leaking it. Now, as for what it is, the optimist in me, and trust me, he's buried far below a bunch of layers of cynicism. But the optimist in me wants to say this is GameCube games, and what they're testing for the online specifically is online multiplayer for Smash Bros. Melee and Mario Kart Double Dash. That's the optimist in me. And I think that's actually a decent prediction. would make sense. This is something they would definitely want to test because Melee has never been an online game, and it is huge. I mean, that would be huge because as amazing as Smash Ultimate is, for some people it will never match Melee, and it's understandable. There are some things you can do in Melee that you just can't do in Smash Ultimate. You know, especially like what's this? Something canceling. I can't remember what it's called, but it's just like there's specific moves that you can do in Melee that the pros do, and they're just extremely good. And like I would never even try because I don't care enough to put that much time into it. But that's the optimistic way of looking at things. The cynic in me is thinking that this is going to be streaming GameCube games. That's what people are testing. They're testing how well it works to stream GameCube games. Now, what would be really funny is if it was streaming GameCube games and testing online multiplayer while streaming those games. Because I could see Nintendo doing something like that, which is insane, but I would not put it past them because we've seen the kind of stuff that Nintendo does. No, I legitimately think that there's going to be GameCube on Nintendo Switch Online. I'm just not entirely sure whether it's going to be native or something else, because the biggest issue they have with doing GameCube games native, if they do it through Switch Online, is really just storage. Because it's like, yeah, the Switch could definitely play those games, there's no question about it, but since the base Switch only has 32 gigs of storage space, I mean, you start adding enough GameCube titles, you could easily fill that up with just GameCube games. Because the GameCube games are bigger. It's like, N64 games, you have like 20 megabytes, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know if it's actually that low. It's been a while since I've looked at the file size of an N64 game, but the point is that it's not a lot. And the GameCube games are oftentimes around 1 to 2 gigs. I mean, depending on the game. Some games are, smaller, probably under a gig. But when you have only 32 gigs of storage and people want to have actual other Switch games, that's not going to work. Switch 2, of course, if the rumors are true about it being 256 gigs of storage, it shouldn't be an issue. They could probably put a dozen GameCube games on there and only take up, a little bit of space and still have plenty to work with for actual Switch games. But yeah, I do think that this is going to be actual GameCube games. I think that the leaks about the GameCube controllers coming for Nintendo Switch Online, which would probably be potentially could be modeled after the Wavebird. My guess is more likely than not it would just be, well, I guess Wavebird was the official Nintendo Switch wireless controller, or not Switch, the official GameCube wireless controller. I mean, they could model it after the Wavebird, or they could just do it off of the basic GameCube controller design and just make it, Bluetooth. But I think this is happening, and I think that this is what this is. It's testing this. It's probably testing the online functionality for games like Smash Bros. Melee. But if it turns out that it is just streaming GameCube games, I will laugh and I will cry. And honestly, I don't really care that much. I hope that they're going to actually put GameCube games on Switch, because there are some that I've never played that I would love to play. And that would actually get me to legitimately use Switch Online, because I basically haven't touched it in a long time. I mean, like, I could play it. I have my Nintendo Switch Online N64 controller, which I've been using recently for when we played Mario Party. And actually, my oldest ended up using this because of the way the control thing got set up. And he seemed to like it, which is always, fun, because it's like, this brings back my childhood. That's my first Nintendo console, and or the first one I owned, even though I was alive long before that. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, same here.
All right. You want to talk about this Bandai Namco situation?
Yeah. So, and also let me pull up just this one thing here I have. So, it's been reported that Bandai Namco is cutting jobs, but also mostly what's that's what I'm looking for here. It's canceling game development and also pausing game development for several games that have been under wrap for in the works, including ones that feature characters from anime like Naruto and One Piece, as well as a project commissioned by a Nintendo company. And additionally, it's reported that the Tokyo-based company is taking a traditionally Japanese approach to reducing staff and sending workers to rooms where they're given nothing to do, putting pressure on them to leave voluntarily. Now, I've got quite a few different things to say about this, but I'll definitely let you go ahead and start things off here first. Oh, also quick thing I'll say is because there was a Bloomberg article that was originally attached to, and of course that has a paywall, but I was able to quickly try to copy the text before the paywall went up, and said that out of the 200 employees that were sent to the empty rooms to do work, nearly 100 have already resigned so far. And they're expecting more people to leave in the coming months. So you can go ahead now. I just want to put that little bit of information there.
Yeah. Like, obviously this must be a more or less common practice in Japan. I don't know. I don't know enough about Japanese culture apart from what I've learned from video games primarily, occasionally manga or anime, but it's it is a definitely a weird thing culturally. I get what they're doing. Obviously, they're just, instead of firing people, they're trying to get them to quit on their own. But wow. I mean, at that point, I'd say, I hope that those people brought like a Switch with them or something to play. Although then again, that would probably just give them the excuse to be fired. But I don't know. Of course, I'm curious about the game that they canceled that was a Nintendo project, or that was commissioned by Nintendo, like what that was. I mean, my guess is it couldn't have been anything big enough to, give them a reason to stay with it, but yeah, I don't know. I really don't have a whole lot of thoughts other than that. I mean, it's a weird situation.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start off with just a couple things with the game stuff. So I'm very surprised that they would be canceling or delaying. Now, I initially thought, how could they cancel something? But maybe the Nintendo thing, as they said, it was possibly paused. So this could be something that they're putting off onto a back burner for right now to focus on other stuff. And I was also curious as to what the game could be. I mean, the only title that I know they had some sort of hand in or development with, and I don't even know what degree that was Smash Ultimate, and I think Smash for Wii U, they also helped out with that a little bit there. But so, like, I'm not certain what the game they could be making for them would be, but it's definitely weird that they would pause something like that, because I mean, Nintendo is a big company to work with. So what could be happening that you would say, we need to either pause or outright cancel the work we're doing with Nintendo? Like, it just definitely seems weird. And also, just on another hand, it just seems weird that they're canceling and or pausing games from larger anime titles like Naruto and One Piece. I mean, those are big titles. Like, it's not as if you're saying something like, I mean, granted, in Japan this would be a bigger deal than over in the West, but I think it's called Captain Hayabusa or something like that, which is pretty much like a soccer series. So like I said, in Japan, it's a bigger thing than over in the West, unless you're just like really into that. But for something like Naruto or One Piece, which are like huge titles and considered like one of the big three, it's rare that they're canceling stuff or pausing games development like for stuff like that. Which is, I mean, also those games have sold pretty decently, I would believe. So that's definitely weird. Now, as far as like the cultural stuff, I am aware of the sending employees to empty rooms to work, because part of it is the fact that with certain laws in Japan, like I think it's very frowned upon, and also like companies can get in trouble if they fire a large amount of employees. So if they directly fire them, it could put the companies in some sort of legal problems. But I do know, as far as with the firing process, the reason motivation behind that is because if you are not doing anything at work, it is frowned upon as if though you are not contributing in any way to the company. And so that is sort of like bringing shame upon you, even though you're still getting paid to, you know, be in that room. It's just frowned upon. And so that's why, you know, it's better if you, well, I don't want to say better, but it seemed as better if you just leave of your own volition than just like stay and be a burden, for lack of words. Although the crazy thing though is, because I also learned this in one of my cultural classes, is that if you are napping at your job, it's seen as a good thing, because people look at it and say, oh, you must be working so hard that, you know, you just need to get a little rest to keep working, which is weird. It's like you're sleeping and doing nothing, it seems as a good thing, but if you're conscious and not doing anything, it's a bad thing. But yeah, that aspect is definitely odd to me. And it's a real shame that, you know, they have to force people to quit in order, you know, so just to not have to fire them because they don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, it's definitely weird all around, and I definitely, though, like you, am very curious as to what this Nintendo game could be, because I'm definitely assuming it will be some sort of exclusive, so which makes it even more curious as to what it could be, because I doubt it's something like a game that was on other platforms and it's getting like a special edition port or something. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that I have.
Yeah, when you talk about, you know, this practice that they have in Japan, it just makes me think of Office Space, when they take I think Milton was the character's name, if I remember correctly. I might be remembering wrong. It's been a while since I watched it. And you know, first they fixed the glitch that he was getting paid even though he had been fired a long time ago. And so then they start like progressively moving him further away from where he started, until eventually he's down in the basement in a room with a bunch of boxes. It's just, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It is not a clean movie. It definitely has a lot of language in it, but it's really funny. And having worked in an office environment, I mean, I've never been in an office environment that was as bad as that, but it was still just like, I could still relate to a lot of the stuff related, I mean, with that, and it's, I don't know, it's just really funny. Yeah. All right. Well, moving on into our next story here. So we had talked about a while ago this rumor from Jeff Grubb that Destiny was getting a mobile game and that it was going to be revealed soon. And the title of that was Destiny Rising. Now, of course, previously, and long before we talked about anything related to this, Bungie had already done something with NetEase. We knew that there was going to be something eventually. It was just a matter of when and what it was going to look like. But we just got the official reveal trailer, as well as a little like developer kind of thing where they go
a little more in depth Now, I'm not going to talk too much about my thoughts on this. We're just going to be showing here the original reveal trailer rather than the developer stuff. But what are your thoughts on this?
So yeah, I definitely was surprised by the quality of the game, as like visually speaking. Like it definitely looks very good. And granted, I know that mobile gaming has definitely come far enough to the point that we have games like Resident Evil 8 running natively on cell phones. But also another thing is that I just have not done anything mobile gaming related in eons. But so I'm definitely surprised at how good it looks. I'm partially just like from an outsider's perspective, since I haven't played Destiny, I'm just like curious as to how much has changed. I know that they said on one hand that the story is set in an alternate universe from the main Destiny game, so I understand it's not gonna be a faithful one-to-one. I don't know as far as the gameplay if things have, or at least sort of like, I guess, the interaction, I will say, if it's different, because this, on one hand, as far as like meeting with other players and just sort of going to other worlds, it kind of seems to me like it was sort of like an MMO in that regards, and I don't know if that's something that is from the main Destiny games or not. So if it is different, then I find that interesting that they would go in that direction. Granted, for a mobile game, I would feel that it would be more relevant in that regards, just because if you're playing online on like a cell phone for mobile gaming, I feel like having that social connection via MMO is better or easier than just maybe getting into a match with other people and doing something like that. One thing that I also thought was interesting, because Destiny's an FPS, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting that this one you can be in first person or third person. I thought that was interesting, that they would have that. I mean, granted, one reason could be is, just so you could see your skins, and that would be one definitely a good reason as to why. And also, just how they don't necessarily have a pure classes like you do in Destiny. I thought that was also interesting, which I think would allow you to have some more variety. Now, granted, when we talked before about how the newest expansion for Destiny 2 was going to have something where it wasn't where you didn't have a straight up class system and you could sort of blend things to your own play style. But to definitely have something that in this game where it is no class system whatsoever, no strict class system, also seems interesting as well. Now, that being said, just looking at some of the gameplay footage from the developer video, I don't know how it feels to play, a FPS on a phone, which is just a touchscreen. I don't know how that would feel. It definitely. I mean, from the last time I did something on any sort of mobile gaming on a touchscreen, I know, granted, it's come a long way, but I just know it was not the best thing in the world. So I'd be very curious to see what that's actually like. But I mean, I probably won't end up playing it, but it definitely is interesting though to see this development coming.
All right. Well, first thing I want to know before I get into my general thoughts on this, it does have controller support for it. So, like I noticed in the developer video, they actually showed one person with the controller attachment on their phone playing that way. So that's very good because even though it obviously at least the basic Destiny always controls way better with mouse and keyboard, controller still works really well. For me, it's hard to go back to controller most of the time because it feels a lot like movement. Well, maybe not movement, but aiming feels a lot slower with a controller than it does with a mouse. So, that being said, I'm super intrigued by this. As I said, I did sign up for the closed alpha. I don't know if I'll actually get in. The alpha starts on November 1st. So if I get in, I will definitely be playing it, and I will report back on how it is. But yeah, for me, the hardest part about this is I'm not entirely convinced it's going to perform well. Like that's the part that I have the hardest time with, because it looks good. Like the graphics look great. It looks like a Destiny game. I mean, there's some animations where I was like, okay, this feels a little wonky. I mean, it doesn't look quite right. But then there's most of the time it looked just fine, especially when in the first person perspective. And the base Destiny is first person most of the time, except when you're wielding like swords and when you're on like your Sparrow, which is basically like a land speeder or not land speeder. Oh gosh, what are they called? Maybe they are land speeders from Star Wars, because they're very clearly inspired by things, the ones that they ride around during Return of the Jedi. So the sparrows in the game are very clearly inspired by those vehicles from Return of the Jedi. And those are, a normal thing that have been there since Destiny 1. And then there's, while you're in your super, typically you will be in a third person perspective, which, like they showed the Scythe gameplay and that sort of thing with the Warlock equivalent. That's a new super. In fact, all the supers that they showed were new. But it was third person for that. I do believe, though, that you're right that it is supposed to be, you can actually choose between first and third person, which definitely is interesting. The one thing I'm wondering with that is how much aim assist there's going to be, because, I mean, aim assist is pretty generous on consoles, which is why I actually thought Destiny felt great on a console, just not as good as mouse and keyboard on PC. But, yeah, especially with the touch controls. Like the touch controls, I mean, I'll try them just to see how they are, but I'm definitely not going to use them. That's why I have my attachable controller for specifically for my phone that works great, and it's it's a good size. Actually has more or less full size joysticks. In fact, I think they're nearly identical. Yeah, they're a little bit smaller than the ones on the actual like Xbox Series controller, but they're still better than the typical mobile game controllers where they're the size of the Switch Joy-Con joysticks. And actually, I guess the size might be pretty similar, but these ones are higher up. Like they have more travel distance and that sort of thing than the Switch joysticks do. And they also are convex, so that you have a better place to put your thumbs. Either way, I'm cautiously optimistic about this game. Now, I know it's going to have some egregious microtransactions, most likely, because NetEase does that. They did that with Diablo Immortal, which was a solid game overall. I mean, is solid despite the egregious microtransactions. It's still completely playable without using them, though. And this one thing that I found interesting is that they've introduced a new weapon class. Specifically, that is a new level of gear, because previously the highest level you could get was exotic, and that's where you have the most fancy schmancy guns that are like unique in appearance and in function, like they have specific unique perks for each one. And they have this new I'm trying to remember what the name of the new class is that they're calling it. At Mythic, I think that's what it was. So I imagine, though, that more likely than not, you are going to be able to pay to win like crazy on this game. Now, in terms of the multiplayer aspects, Destiny 1, it has most activities you can do 3-player matchmaking, including like strikes and that sort of thing. PvP stuff, which I don't think there's going to be any PvP in this game, but that is 6 players. And supposedly, from my understanding with Destiny Rising, there's going to be 6-player strikes, which previously the only like big act. Well, I should say there was not 6 players for strikes previously, because strikes were only 3 players, and so that part is interesting. And like, I'm super curious about how the game's going to run with a bunch of people in a party at a time, because like when you have a single person, I could see, yeah, that makes more sense. But once you start adding in other people, that does make it more demanding. And I don't know, I need to see more. Most of all, I just want to see how it actually runs on my phone. And my phone's only a couple years old, so theoretically it should still run pretty well on mine. And mine was top of the line a couple of years ago, for a Samsung device at least. So theoretically it should be able to run pretty well, but like the big thing for me is I want it to be 60 frames. And I'm okay with sacrificing a bit on the visuals if I can get 60 FPS. But I'm just not sure. I know playing Destiny 2 on my Steam Deck, which of course is certainly more complex than this game is going to be, the best I could do on average was 40 frames per second, and that was with significantly reduced visuals. And even sometimes I would still get some stutter. But yeah, I don't know. I want to see more. I think that it has potential to be really good for a mobile game, and I'm definitely willing to give it a shot. I mean, I could totally see myself trying to play this one as a mobile game, but it could also just be exactly like Diablo Immortal was, where I play it for a little bit as like an appetizer, and then I'm like, I just want to play Destiny 2 instead, because Destiny 2 is far deeper, and there's so much more you can do, and of course a lot more customization, and a lot more weapons, and so on and so forth. So, I don't know. Trying to think if there's anything else really. I need to get my hands on it and see what I think from there. I know that I'm not spending a single dime on it, because even if I really enjoy it, I spent way too much money on Destiny and I basically have not touched the game since March, I think, probably. And I still need to finish the campaign from the last expansion. Never mind all the other stuff that's come out since then, including bringing back a Destiny 1 exotic very recently in the new dungeon. But anyway.
One quick question. I know you said, I know it mentioned when the closed beta was going to start. Did they say when they were going to select or notify people if they have been selected for the?
Don't think so, because I mean, this game only got announced a couple days ago. But or actually, it might have been yesterday. Now that I think about it. But it's definitely a situation where I'm sure that, well, there's a couple weeks before it starts up, so we'll just have to see.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other thoughts?
No, sir.
All right. Well, going on into our next story here. So, as I had been discussing earlier, God of War. There's been a rumor for a while going around that the God of War Saga Collection, which was originally released for PS3, had 5 games, included. I think it was just 5. Yeah, because it was God of War 1, 2, 3, and then the 2 PSP games, so Chains of Olympus and Ghosts of Sparta. Previously released on PS3. I have the collection myself. Supposedly, there's going to be a PS5 remaster of that collection. And, of course, right now, this is completely
confirmed, but the idea is that this collection would include all of the Greek mythology God of War games. So that includes God of War 1, 2, 3, Ghosts of Sparta, Chains of Olympus, and Ascension. So it would be including all 6 of the different God of War games from that saga. So, what are your thoughts on this?
It definitely seems likely, as you said, it happens. The announcement would happen during the 20th anniversary, which would be a perfect and opportune time to do something like this. In addition, Sony has been remastering and remaking games as of late anyway, so that's another reason as to why this is likely. All in all, I mean, I think it's definitely a possibility. I think it's something that we could hear for the 20th anniversary, or something maybe even we could hear something maybe slightly beforehand and then actually just happens to be released on the 20th anniversary. That's also something that could happen as well. But I do see this as it being possible. I mean, we've even before talked about here and there talking about rumors, and I think possibly it was a remake of the first God of War at one point. But if having a remaster is the easiest thing for Sony to do, I see that it's definitely possible, especially since they've got Nixxes also working with them as well. Now, even though it wasn't mentioned in the article about a PC version coming, at least I'm very certain I did not see PC on here, I feel like this is something that could possibly also see a PC port, especially since, as far as with remasters go, Sony has been doing stuff day and date, like with Until Dawn. I feel like this is something that could also be a day and date if it's coming out, especially since this is something that I feel a lot of PC gamers would like, especially for those who played the games originally. As far as the Greek God of War goes, people who might not necessarily care for the gameplay of the new ones, but maybe like once they go back to the hack and slash, sort of like juggling as well, what you could do with the original games. So I feel like that's another reason as to why that could get ported all over to PC as well. But we'll see. Time will definitely tell, but just as of now, I think it's definitely a possibility that it's coming.
All right, so to give my basic thoughts on this collection, essentially, I am for it. I think it's a really good idea for them to bring it out, especially with the 20th anniversary coming up. It just seems like the timing is perfect, and this is one collection that people actually want. I will say I think it's very, very likely that this is going to be day and date as a PC release, just because that's what they've been doing lately with the remasters. Of course, personally, I would be quite content with them choosing to censor this, more so just because of my personal convictions regarding the nudity and everything else. But at the same time, I also think it would be kind of nice if they had the option to toggle it on or off for the people that prefer that. Prefer to have it off versus on, because I understand, some people, they're completely against the censorship, and like I understand that from the perspective of not liking the idea of forcing people to do it the way that they want it. And the reality is that these games exist separately in the uncensored fashion. Personally, I just want to completely avoid that. So I'm fine with them doing it either way, though I do think it would be nice for the people who want it kept in its original form to have the option to keep it that way. So that's essentially the way I feel about it. This is part of the reason, though, that I have held off on deciding whether or not I'm actually going to play through the older versions of the games, because I can technically I can play the majority of the games with the exception of God of War 3 and Ascension, which I'm not even sure if I'm going to play Ascension on my Steam Deck. God of War 3 I know should emulate just fine on my PC, and I mean realistically, worst case scenario, I can play all but Ascension on my PS3. So because I have the PS3 versions of these games, I mean it's completely doable for me to play that way. So it's just kind of like back and forth on it. But overall, I definitely think that this is a good thing that they're doing it. It's just a question of whether or not I would purchase it myself. But I think it would be cool if they did it for the people who really want it. And just because it would be nice to have a native PC versions of these games. My hope is that they would basically just leave the game as is. And if anything, they would, like I said, if they're going to do censorship, make it an optional thing for people who don't want it to be censored, whereas I personally prefer it to be censored. So that's a summary of how I feel about it. That's all I got.
Same here.
All right. Well, I think that we're getting to a good stopping point now. So, no, we do have one last story to cover here, and we don't have much of any information on the matter. I just kind of want to talk about it briefly because I think that there's some interesting speculation we could do, and we'll see tomorrow if I'm correct. So, tomorrow, as of the time of recording, because today is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. Tomorrow, the 17th. Xbox is going to have a partner preview that is taking place at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. And it's going to be, showing third-party games that are coming to Xbox. So, we have no idea what's going to be there. It may just be typical, exactly what you expect on Xbox. But I do have some theories about some big games that could be coming over. But why don't you go first?
So I'm not 100% certain what I expect to see, just because I partially feel like I should keep my expectations in check. Now, I do know that I believe said that the Alan Wake 2 DLC is going to be shown, as well as Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii will be shown. But as far as something new, because there's said multiple world premieres, I'm very curious as to what it could be, because I know that there was some talk about possibly, as far as like Microsoft working with some sort of Japanese companies to help bolster support for the Xbox. However, I feel like on one hand, anything that would have been Japanese related would have happened during Tokyo Game Show. So I'm trying to think of anything that would happen, say, on the Western side that could be showing up, which I'm not certain. Now, oh, never mind. Because if it's a world premiere, I definitely feel like it would be a new title. Because I was gonna say, I don't know, maybe they're gonna show something and like have a release date, like a concrete release date, like something maybe with GTA 6 or something like that. But for one thing, that wouldn't be a world premiere, and two, I think they already have sort of like a tentative time frame, not like a season.
Just 2025.
Just 2025. Okay. And one really I don't know why, but I feel like, and I also know that we also talked about the possibility of Sony footing the bill for this, but for some crazy reason, I want to say that they could show like Batman Arkham game, whatever it is. Like, I don't know, for some reason, I just feel like that would be something that they could show, but I just feel like it's unlikely. As far as any other partners that I can think of, I'm not certain off the top of my head who I would even think about that could be something that's major. So anything that I think would be something that is on a smaller scale, and then also anything else that I think of would be more so like something that they're personally working with. So that wouldn't really be a partner game. But yeah, I'm just not certain entirely what I would expect to see.
Well, the point about probably anything being shown at Tokyo Game Show, I think that's a reasonable point, and you're probably correct on this. But my theory, and this is the main reason I wanted to talk about this topic, is I think that this could be, even though it is a Japanese series, this could be where we see Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy XVI announced for the Xbox. Now, of course, I could be completely wrong on the matter. And assuming they did do Remake, they would probably do Rebirth, announced as well. But if they did do it, if they did do that and they announced, like Remake is available now and we'll have a physical version later, and then Rebirth is, available such and such date, and then it would later be announced that it's coming to PC the same day, because it will be coming to PC, of course. And Final Fantasy 16, of course, is already on PC. But I could see them doing that, and the reason why in my mind, the reason why they didn't announce this at Tokyo Game Show is because Xbox wanted this to be an announcement on their end, because this is a new partnership with Square Enix to help start bringing over some of those great games that they haven't been able to bring over in the past. And it's just a theory, and ultimately it's not going to impact us one way or the other, because neither of us owns an Xbox. And I mean, we already have Final Fantasy VII Remake, we already have Final Fantasy 16, we'll be getting Rebirth, we just don't know when. So even though, of course, I'd love to get a release date for Rebirth, I also don't have money to buy it right now, so I'm fine with waiting. And but I think it would be great for Xbox fans to have the ability to finally play some of these great games, because Square Enix in general makes great games. Or they could just announce Forspoken.
Oh goodness!
You get Forspoken. That's our big announcement. That's the last announcement of the show. And coming, or it's like it's available now. But no, I do think that it could happen, and I will probably be totally wrong on this, but I'm still gonna say I think it's gonna happen, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. By the time this podcast comes out, it will already be past, so we'll see if I was correct. And even if I'm not, it's fine, because it makes no difference on our side of things. I just want more people to be able to play these games, and I also want Sony to not be able to always hold on to these games that are great games. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I absolutely loved. I 100%ed it. I went through both on normal and then again on hard, so that I could, and did every single achievement for that, including like the crazy difficult boss fight against Vice that you could only do after completing the main game. Actually, I think it was even, you actually had to also complete Intermission, the DLC, in order to be able to access the Vice boss fight, if I remember correctly. Either way, yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. I loved it, and I want more people to be able to play it. So that's all I got. I have no other predictions whatsoever. All right. Anything else before we close out?
No, sir.
All right. Recommendations and dissuasions.
All right. So my recommendation, let me make sure it's just one here. And Okay, yeah. So just one recommendation. So my recommendation is to, if you're building your own PC, try to, and actually primarily this is gonna be with small form factors. You should have an easier time if you're building something that's larger, like a mid tower. Is to try to figure out your cable management before you put your PC into the case, because trying to rearrange everything once you've already screwed the motherboard in, it's not going to be fun, because you're going to try to figure out, oh, where do I plug this in? Where do I plug that in? How do I plug this in? It's going to be a nightmare to work with. And especially, some cables are going to be harder to plug in than others, so that will be a huge nightmare. So just try to understand how you want everything to be routed before you put it in. You might have a weird case like I did, where my CPU cable was gonna have to be changed because I forgot about having to plug in my GPU, but for the most part, it will work out well for you. So try to save yourself that headache by thinking of things ahead of time. Like I said, if you're building this in a larger case, then you might be better off in that case.
Indeed. All right, well, I have a three-way recommendation. First thing I'm going to recommend is something completely unrelated to anything we've been talking about tonight, but it was just because I had it for dinner and it was delicious. And that is making yourself some street tacos. So, for those who are not familiar with street tacos, basically it's very small tortillas. Like the typical corn tortilla, it's like half the size of that. Maybe even a third of the size. I don't know exactly the size comparison, but they're like little tiny tortillas, and typically you'd get them from like a street vendor or whatever, whether you live in a place that has that type of thing, or you're in Mexico. But typically you'll do two of the mini tortillas, and then you'll put some meat on it, and a lot of times it'll just be like onion and cilantro and not much more. But either way, street tacos are amazing, and I made some this evening, and was just using some leftover carne asada I made, which is steak, and I tried various combinations just because I felt like it. So that's my first recommendation. My second recommendation, if you enjoyed God of War Ragnarok and you have not played the Valhalla DLC yet, play the Valhalla DLC. It is so worth it. It's so much fun. It's also great if you enjoy Hades in that type of game. It's just a really solid game. I mean, I definitely recommend not playing it if you haven't played through the story of Ragnarok. And also playing through Ragnarok helps a lot in that you learn the combat well enough to where you're less likely to have issues going through Valhalla. Because I definitely didn't have much of any issues. I've had to be revived a handful of times, but it's very, very few. And I've only had one run where I actually died before the end of the run. And that time, man, that was annoying, because I was like, I had Tyr down to a sliver of health, and then he killed me. And actually, no, it wasn't even him that killed me. It was one of the enemies he summoned, one of the annoying, mini bosses that he summoned. One of the elite enemies, I guess you could say. It's just, there's a really annoying centaur that gets summoned occasionally, and I hate dealing with that, period. But especially when I'm also dealing with Tyr at the same time, and various other smaller enemies. So, but yes, Valhalla is great. And then lastly, if you like puzzle games that do not hold your hand, and you're okay with exploring and figuring things out on your own, check out Animal Well. It is a really great game. It's on basically every platform. It might even be on mobile. I don't know if it is, but it might be. I know it's on Switch and PC and Xbox and PlayStation, and it's all over the place, but it's fantastic. Not demanding at all. It's entirely 2D, so you could play it probably on a potato without any difficulties, or on a really old computer. So that's what I got for recommendations.
Nice. Quick question, because I forgot to ask this earlier. About how long would you say a run of Valhalla is?
The last one that I did which was a slightly longer run because I also fought a berserker in that run, was 45 minutes. 44 minutes and some odd seconds. That's how long the recording was. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious since you said you completed about 10 times already. I was like, oh wow, it's not that long then.
Yeah, and I think most of my runs were shorter than that, but because of the fact that I wanted to go up to the arena and see about fighting Berserker mostly for the recording, then it ended up being a little bit longer. I mean, that fight didn't take me long. I was done in probably 2-3 minutes on that fight because I knew the patterns well enough to where I could avoid a lot of the attacks, and I only got hit a few times. So, but anyway, yep. So what do you have for a dissuasion or dissuasions?
So my dissuasion is going to be, do not buy a gaming laptop if it is feasible for you. I know some people might have reasons for buying one, but if you can get a desktop instead of a laptop, I would definitely say go ahead and do it because it will be so much better for you in the long run. It's definitely something that I wish I had done, but I wasn't able to do it just because partially with going to college and stuff, it made more sense to invest in a laptop than having to get a desktop, especially since I was working a part-time job and had to I couldn't necessarily get one or the other or get both. I had to choose, so getting the laptop made more sense. But if it had happened a little bit later and right in the middle of COVID, then I would have said, yeah, I'll just go ahead and get a desktop instead. I would have done that. But yeah, it's definitely in the long run, it's a better investment because you can pay a good amount of money and get a decent laptop, but at the same time, you could spend that same money on a desktop and get better performance, relatively speaking. And down the line, you'll have to replace the laptop anyway if you want to get better performance or something like that. Whereas you can replace just like a couple components and have a better experience on the desktop. So I mean, if you have a reason for needing a laptop, like if you're like I said, going to college and you have to commute and use a laptop at school or something like that, then fine, and you also have something that you can play with you on the go. But if not, then I definitely would just suggest recommend getting a gaming desktop instead.
Agreed wholeheartedly. So, all right. Well, my dissuasion is that if you are editing a big video project, do not try to edit too quickly to where you could make a big error with audio sync, because that's not always easy to fix. Thankfully, mine wasn't too bad to fix, but it's still just, I ended up spending more time on that than I needed to, and considering how long this particular one is taking as it is, it just added probably an extra hour of work on that wouldn't have been necessary if I had been more careful as I was going along. So that's what I got.
Nice. I'll keep that in mind.
All right. Well, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I put out a video the other day. I think it might have been Monday or Tuesday, but discussing the sort of controversy around Valve coming out and saying that gamers only have licenses for their games, and sort of like the backlash around that, as well as GOG, poking a little fun at that and saying that gamers fully own the games that they buy on their store. So primarily talking about that and my thoughts around that controversy.
Yep, good stuff. All right, well, you can find me on my YouTube channel at TheFrozenGamer87. This past week, I've just been continuing to put out clips for the podcast. There will be, typically it ends up being one per day, from Saturday through Thursday. And And some of those have been getting decent views. A lot of them are, single digits, which isn't really surprising. But we did get, I think, 1 or 2 more subscribers for the podcast. Probably just 1. But, every little bit helps. And that's the primary purpose of putting up those clips. Plus, it's also just getting consistent content on the channel. And there are some of them that are doing reasonable. Nowhere near as well as like my comparison videos, but still, a couple hundred views in some cases. So that's good. I am working on my Persona 4 Golden comparison between the Switch, Vita, and the Steam Deck OLED, all OLED devices. And I'm planning to have that go up on Monday, the 28th of October. And then after that, I'll be doing my Persona 5 Royal comparison, which thankfully I should be able to get that completely done in one day, because that doesn't have nearly as much like story stuff within that time frame. It has a lot more action, so I think it's just going to be easier in general. Plus, it's only 2 devices instead of 3, which makes a massive difference in how much time it takes to put together. So stay tuned for that. I also have a YouTube cooking channel, not authentic but delicious. That's youtube.com/@NABDcooking. I did not put anything out this week, primarily because I need to record voiceover for the videos that I have ready to go otherwise. And I really wanted to work on the Persona comparison because it's just so much work. And the cooking videos don't take as much time, but recording the voiceover, it's like, there's a reason why I typically record as I do the voiceover as I am recording, so that I don't have to do all that, and then it just makes my job easier. But this is one of these 2 videos, it was just a situation where I didn't have the option to talk through the process. So there will be something out next week. I just have to have the time to do the recording. Or well, I'd say there should be something out next week. If not, there will be something up the following week. Either way, there's that. One last thing I do want to mention, going back to my main gaming channel, is that coming up on Friday, October 25th, which of course I will mention again next week, I am going to be doing a 24-hour charity stream to raise money for Stack Up. This is my 3rd year doing it, and this is a great charity that basically is there to help veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and having difficulties with connections with other people, and just like all the difficulties that come as a result of being part of the military, especially if you're in active combat situations and things involved with having to kill people, and just all sorts of various issues that come as a result of being in the military. And this charity is very heavily focused on helping veterans get the help they need, and some of that through video games, helping them to have something to help them process the stuff that they've gone through, but also to help connect them with more people. And it's a great charity. I'm looking forward to doing it. I'm starting at 9 a.m. Central Time on my Frozen Gamer 87 YouTube channel. So I will once again mention that next week. I will put the link to that in the description of both the audio and the video versions of the podcast for the page where you can donate if you so desire. Not required to donate, but if you're able to stop by the stream and simply just say hi, especially if you are a night owl and you're up in the middle of the night, it would be very much appreciated, because the middle of the night is the one time when I really can use the brain engagement so that I'm not falling asleep. Even though I am very seriously considering doing a 15-minute power nap during the stream, like instead of taking a normal break where I'm just like walking around or whatever, laying down for 15 minutes and waking up right after that, and then just getting some caffeine and seeing if that helps. I think I'm going to try that this year, see if that works, because if that could help, I know in the past sometimes power nap is what I need to help me get through a day in general when I'm really tired. So we'll see how it goes, but either way, that's what I'm planning to do. Just one second. No, cat's putting her paw under the door. Okay, anyway. But then, of course, regarding the podcast itself, of course, we have our video version of the podcast, youtube.com/@theorangeboxpodcast. So if you are listening to the audio only version, which comes out at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, the video version is on our YouTube channel. And the video version not only allows you to see our beautiful faces, but also gives you the opportunity to see clips from games we've been playing, as well as videos related to various topics we're discussing, whether it's, in this case, talking about Destiny Rising, where I did, in fact, play the trailer, play the trailer for it, or talk about the God of War collection and playing the original collection trailer for the PS3 version, that sort of thing. It's just an opportunity to see different things that you wouldn't normally get to see otherwise. And I think that's that one is normally goes up 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday morning, unless I'm having issues with processing or rendering or what have you, like I had this past week. But in general, it's going to be Friday morning, barring any major issues. Either way, the audio only version always goes up. And the audio only version is on all major podcast platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. You can find it on any of those platforms, as well as a bunch of others. And that is a great way to do it. Of course, if you are able to leave us a review on any one of those platforms, it's greatly appreciated. I don't know how easily I'll be able to find some of them, but I will certainly try looking from time to time. And of course, if you want to contact us, you can do that, as previously mentioned, through the video version of the podcast. You can just leave a comment on the video. And if you're not wanting to do that, you can also send us an email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send us a tweet on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it, @theorangeboxpod. And feel free, if you have any questions, comments, any feedback whatsoever. If you want to tell us to Persona 3 ourselves, that's fine. Just feel free to reach out. And if you don't, no big deal, because the reality is we're going to talk for 2.5 hours probably every week, because this is how we catch up from week to week. This is how we have our outlet to talk about video games, and it's just a good time. So we've been doing this a little over a year now, and don't have any plans to stop anytime soon. So last chance. You got any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, I have a need for games. Orange Box Podcast out.